ourselves at the climax of our month-long journey through the enchanting depths of Song of Songs, where poetry and drama and love intertwine. And within the pages of this mysterious book, we've been captivated by the passionate dialogue between its three central figures, a Shulamite maiden, her devoted shepherd, and the illustrious King Solomon, who serves as both the antagonist as well as the author of the book itself. And throughout this timeless tale of love and longing, we've witnessed the trials and triumphs of these young lovers against the backdrop of Solomon's power and privilege. So recapping our journey so far, the opening chapter introduces us to this young Israelite maiden from humble Hebrew village of Shulam. And despite being conscripted into the opulent world of King Solomon's harem, she remains steadfast in her devotion to her beloved shepherd, demonstrating courage and determination in the face of adversity. And as the narrative continued to unfold, we witnessed these poignant expressions of longing between the Shulamite and her shepherd, but they're always tempered by her staunch commitment to not awaken love before the time is right. And that's the repeated refrain in those early chapters. And then, as we saw last Sunday, a pivotal moment emerged as King Solomon arrives in all of his grandeur, and he whisks the Shulamite into his chambers, showering her with flattering and alluring praise. And in this moment of vulnerability, she yields to his advances, torn between duty and desire. However, her heart remains tethered to her shepherd. And a fleeting glimpse of hope arises that night when her shepherd finally comes to rescue her from her palace confines. But before she can get to the door to let him in, he vanishes away. And so she searches for him frantically in the streets, only to get apprehended and assaulted by the town watchman, which is emblematic of her bruised and beaten emotional state. So battered and vulnerable on the cold cobbled streets of Jerusalem, the Shulamite girl calls out to the ensemble, to the choir, as it were, in verse 8 of Song of Songs 5. And she says, "Make this promise, O women of Jerusalem. If you find my lover, tell him I am weak with love." And this is where our story picks up. That's where we left off last Sunday, and we'll pick up right there today. So if you have a Bible or an app on your phone, go ahead and join me in Song of Songs chapters 5 through 8. We've got a lot of ground to cover today in these last 3.5 chapters. The Shulamite's earnest plea leaves the women of Jerusalem kind of puzzled, right? Who would forsake the lavish attention of a wealthy king for a humble shepherd from the countryside? And so they question her. They respond in verse 9 to this statement. "Why is your lover better than all others, O woman of rare beauty? What makes your lover so special that we must promise this?" Right? And this is another clue, by the way, and I've talked a few times all throughout the series about how this isn't just about Solomon and the Shulamite, that there's three characters here, not two. And this is another clue to that, because they wouldn't be asking this about Solomon. You know, it's obvious what makes Solomon so rich. I mean, he's rich, he's powerful, he's the king. But for someone to reject Solomon in favor of someone else, now that raises an eyebrow and prompts this question: what's so special about your lover? And this opens the door for her to reflect on the traits that she loves about her shepherd. And so she begins in verse 10. "My lover is handsome and strong. He is 1 in 10,000. And the verses that follow are just like a multi-verse parade of praise, where she describes her beloved in vivid poetic detail. And you can kind of run a finger along there to keep up with me if you want. She compares his head to pure gold, symbolizes symbolizing purity and value. She praises his raven-colored hair. His eyes are gentle and peaceful like doves by spring water, indicating a sense of serenity and beauty. His cheeks are compared to a bed of spices, suggesting a delightful fragrance and attractiveness. His lips are likened to lilies dripping with myrrh, highlighting their softness and their sweetness. His arms are portrayed as golden rods decorated with topaz, indicating strength and attractiveness. She compares his body to polished ivory, decorated with precious gems, suggesting smoothness and beauty. She describes his legs as firm and majestic, like marble pillars, symbolizing strength and stability. Overall, she compares her shepherd, his appearance, to the beauty of Lebanon cedars, highlighting his magnificence and stature. And then she concludes in verse 16, he is altogether lovely. This is my beloved. This is my friend, daughters of Jerusalem. And what a wonderful reminder for us to praise our own beloved partners. Take a moment to reflect, what qualities do you admire most about your spouse or your fiance? What gestures or traits make them uniquely special to you? When was the last time you actually expressed those sentiments out loud? Sharing heartfelt compliments and affirmations not only boosts our partner's self-esteem, but it also strengthens our bond with them. It fosters this atmosphere of appreciation and gratitude within the relationship, enhancing mutual respect and understanding, admiration for each other. And so by vocalizing our admiration and affection, we cultivate a deeper connection to our loved one, reaffirming the importance of their presence in our lives. So I want to encourage you, and that's one of the lessons that we get taught over and over throughout the Song of Solomon. Let's follow in the shepherd and the Shulamite's example and make a regular habit of acknowledging and celebrating those wonderful qualities that make our partner so dear to us. Now, after this eloquent expression of admiration and affection, the women of Jerusalem agree to help her find her lost love. They say in the start of chapter 6, "Where has your lover gone, O woman of rare beauty? Which way did he turn so that we can help you find him?" So now the story has taken this interesting turn. and these women of Jerusalem, this ensemble or choir or whatever it is, that has been urging and prompting her to be with Solomon, has finally kind of come around, and now they're like, okay, we're going to help you find your lost shepherd. And she answers them. It's interesting in verses 2 and 3 there. She says that she thinks that he's gone down to a garden to browse among the lilies. And now this could just be a reference to like an actual location that she thinks he's gone off to. But it also could be a callback to earlier in their relationship. Remember where she calls herself the lily of the valley, or a lily of the valley, and he's like, no, you're a lily among thorns. And so she says that he's gone to browse among the lilies, and that could be a reference to her fear that he's off looking for another woman at this point, right? Like he doesn't even want anything to do with me anymore. He's gone. He's gonna be out with some other lady trying to find a replacement for me at this point. But either way, her fears are unwarranted, because suddenly her shepherd reappears and takes center stage. In the very next verse, he immediately begins to shower her with praise, echoing his earlier admiration for her eyes, her hair, her smile, her cheeks, etc. But the most notable sentiment lies in verses 8 and 9, where he declares, "Even among 60 queens and 80 concubines and countless young women, I would still choose my dove, my perfect one." Here, the shepherd unequivocally affirms that amidst a multitude of potential partners, all of those other lilies in the valley, she remains his only choice. Even if he were in Solomon's position with access to all the women in the world, hundreds concubines and wives, she would still be the only woman in the world for him. And in declaring his unwavering devotion to the Shulamite, he's really performing an immensely powerful gesture. See, in their social context, being conscripted into Solomon's harem, losing her virginity, and then subsequently fleeing, like just running away from Solomon to start a new life somewhere else, would have made her completely undesirable to most men. She would have been off limits. People wouldn't have been interested in her. And so she likely would have had to either move back in with her parents or something like that, where she wouldn't have been able to, get married and have kids and have her own family. And none of that would have been available to her. And so for the shepherd to come back and to say, listen, I still love you. I still want you. He's pledging his unyielding love, and it symbolizes his commitment to her well-being and her honor. This gesture ensures her support and protection, countering the stigma attached to her situation and restoring her standing within the community. It is, in essence, an act of redeeming love. And as the scene closes, the Shulamite and her shepherd leave the palace behind and return to the countryside from which they came, as evidenced by the women of Jerusalem calling out behind them, "Return, return to us, O maid of Shulam. Come back, that we may see you again." But they're not interested in coming back. Undeterred, the curtain closes on chapter 6. And this was the climax of our story, the reuniting of the shepherd and the Shulamite. They finally come back together. He pledges his undying love to her. They're reunited and they head home. But we've still got the resolution to get through, right? So as chapters 7 and 8 begin, we encounter another romantic and sensual exchange between the two lovers in anticipation of their wedding. And the shepherd once again begins by describing his beautiful bride in colorful metaphors. He compares her sandaled feet to a queenly maiden and her thighs to the work of a skilled artist. That's in verse 1 of chapter 7. He likens her navel to a wine glass and her stomach to, well, he compares her stomach to a heap of wheat. And I wouldn't recommend using that line today, guys. In an ancient agricultural setting, that would have been taken as a compliment. It would have been understood as an expression of desirability, perhaps even fertility. But to say something positive about her, if you tell your wife that she has a belly like a heap of wheat today, you're likely to sleep on the couch. So I wouldn't repeat that one. But she took it well. And as the shepherd continues, notice this time he's starting at the bottom. He starts with her feet, her thighs, her belly, and then he works up to her breasts, which he compares to twin fawns of a gazelle, and her neck to an ivory tower, much like Solomon did in chapter 4. And then he compliments her eyes and her nose and her hair in verse 5. And he concludes in verse 6, "Oh, how beautiful you are, how pleasing, my dove, how full of delights." And once more, just another reminder, in case you guys haven't got it, these verses serve as a poignant reminder to couples, young and old, about the importance of expressing our attraction to one another. They encourage us to take notice and to celebrate all of the little intricacies, all the little details about our spouse, our lover, and to communicate those things verbally, fostering this atmosphere of appreciation and attraction and affection within the relationship. But the temperature rises, it gets a little bit spicy, as the shepherd expresses his desire. And guys, this is my favorite verse in the entire book of Song of Songs, because I can almost not get through it with a straight face. Verse 8 here. "You are slender like a palm tree, and your breasts are like clusters of fruit. I said, I will climb that palm tree and take hold of its fruit." And Ashley can testify, I quote this one sometimes just randomly at home. It's in the Bible, guys. And while this metaphor may elicit a chuckle, it conveys, I think, a deeper message about the importance of playfulness and flirting and foreplay in romantic relationships. Rather than simply rushing directly into the actual act of sex, he doesn't do that. He promises to take time to climb the palm tree, as it were, symbolizing a gradual, playful progression towards sexual intimacy. This metaphor reminds me of a wonderful book by Dr. Kevin Leman titled "Sex Begins in the Kitchen Because Love is an All-Day Affair." And in it, he writes, I'll just read one little bit from it. He says, sex is about more than just physical encounters under the covers. It's about a lifestyle of passion and intimacy that can be felt throughout the day. And it's all about how to tease and flirt and play with each other throughout the day, setting the stage for sex that night or that afternoon or whatever, rather than just, jumping into it without any preparation. And, in our fast-paced world, many couples, I think, struggle sexually because they prioritize instant gratification over fun, flirtatious foreplay. In short, you'll have more success and satisfaction if you learn to climb the palm tree before you take hold of the fruit. Returning to our story, though, the Shulamite speaks to her shepherd, verses 12 and 13. Come, my beloved, let us go to the countryside. Let us spend the night in the villages. Let us go early to the vineyards to see if the vines have budded, if the blossoms have opened, and if the pomegranates are in bloom. There I will give you my love. And so we see the culmination of this vineyard imagery that has been, interwoven all throughout the story. She's saying the time is right. Right? Let's go see. I think that the vines are ripe and that we're ready to go. And a lot of folks read this last line and understandably interpret it as a reference to sexual intimacy. There I will give you my love. And that's possible, but I think here it actually has a broader meaning. And it's actually referring to her pledging her love to him in marriage. In other words, she wants to go into the villages and spend the night and then have an outdoor wedding in the morning, right? And I think this understanding is supported by the very next passage, because as we move into chapter 8, her thought just continues, and she starts sort of fantasizing about being able to kiss him and taking him into her childhood bedroom. And then she envisions this embrace where his left hand is under her head and his right hand embraces her. It's the same intimate embrace that she described back in chapter 2, verse 6. But then, almost as if on cue, she immediately pumps the brakes and she repeats that refrain one last time. Promise me, O women of Jerusalem, not to awaken love until the time is right. So even after everything that they've been through together and everything that she's been through apart from him, she clings fiercely to this notion that true love waits. Rather than surrendering to her sexual urges, she holds out one more night until they can be wed. And then in the following verses, she pledges her love, just as she said she would, to her betrothed and what may well be the wedding ceremony. These read kind of like an exchange of vows. And so starting in verse 6, this is what she says. Place me like a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm, for love is as strong as death. Its jealousy unyielding as the grave. It burns like blazing fire, like a mighty flame. Many waters cannot quench love. Rivers cannot sweep it away. If one were to give all the wealth of one's house for love, it would be utterly scorned. In these verses, the Shulamite sums up the theme and message of the song while simultaneously extolling the virtues of love and expressing her love for her shepherd. She describes her love, and not just her love, but really love as a whole, as a concept, as being incredibly intimate, like a seal impressed into someone's heart. If you picture, the wax seals, and you would have your emblem that you press down into it and it would leave an imprint there. That's what she's talking about there. A seal on his heart being pressed into his heart. And then she says that love is intense, as strong and powerful as death, as powerful as a mighty flame. And actually the word translated mighty flame there is more literally flame of God. It is the flame of Elohim. It is the flame of God. And so this is actually the only place where God's name is used throughout the entire book. But it's that flame from heaven. And then she says that love is indestructible, for no amount of water can extinguish it or sweep it away. And finally, love is invaluable, for no amount of money can purchase it. Solomon, with all of his riches and his palace and his empire, could not buy her love. True love, in other words, it's personal, it's passionate, it's persevering, and it is priceless. And so, as the epilogue of the story unfolds, and this, if this is representing a marriage ceremony, it kind of flows where they have the exchange of vows, and then following the wedding, there's typically, other people speaking and giving toasts and things like that at the reception. And so she hears the words of her brothers. And her brothers have this weird imagery of being a wall or a door, which represents strength or vulnerability, respectively. And they pledge to support her and strengthen her and add layers of protection upon her on her wedding day. And she replies to them, though, saying that she doesn't need any of that she is herself strong and mature, and that she has everything that she needs in her lover, that she has the safety and contentment that she needs through him. That's all in verses 8 and 9, and then verse 10 is her response. And then reflecting on her experience, the thoughts of this blushing bride turn back to Solomon one last time. And she crafts this compelling metaphor, again, going back to that metaphor of the vineyard. And she says in verses 11 and 12, Solomon had a vineyard at Baal Harmon. He rented the vineyards for others to tend, but my own vineyard is mine to give. This is the definitive assertion that the vineyard of her love does not belong to Solomon. Unlike Solomon, who leased out his love to hundreds of wives and concubines, she reserves her affection exclusively for her beloved shepherd. And then finally, the song closes with the bride calling out to her shepherd in verse 14, "Come away, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or like a young stag on the spice-laden mountains." And this scene kind of plays out like the cliched ending where the couple drives off and they've got the cans dangling from the back of their car and the just married sign in the rear window. They're essentially riding off into the sunset together, infused with hope and excitement. There's definitely this sense of adventure woven into this last verse. In short, they live happily ever after. So what's the takeaway for us from this whole sweeping narrative? Well, the Song of Songs at its core celebrates the profound depth and beauty of romantic love. It serves as a poignant reminder to love, honor, and cherish your spouse or your future spouse with passion and commitment. I mean, true biblical love is depicted in this timeless text is marked by intimacy and intensity and unwavering resilience. And for those who find themselves in relationships where the flame of passion has dimmed, let this scripture be a catalyst for reigniting that spark and rediscovering the fervent love that once flourished. Now, just as Solomon urges in Proverbs chapter 15, he says, let us delight in the love of our partner. May we be ever intoxicated with his or her love. Let Song of Songs be a call to rekindle the romance and revive the passion in your relationship. And on another level, as I mentioned at the outset of the series, the Song of Songs transcends its own narrative to illustrate Christ's redeeming love for humanity. Through this poignant love story, we get glimpses of Christ's relentless and redeeming love. Much like the hero of this tale, Jesus is our shepherd, the good shepherd, who is the lover of our souls, who lavishes us with God's love and loves us no matter what we've been through, no matter who we are, no matter where we've been or what we've done. And, maybe you've spent a good part of your life looking for love in all the wrong places. Or maybe those who should have loved you didn't. Maybe those who could have loved you didn't. Despite the hurts inflicted by others, Jesus offers us a love that heals and restores, a love that remains steadfast amidst brokenness and pain. Whether abandoned or neglected by others, Jesus' love stands as a beacon of hope and affirmation. So in those moments when you feel unloved or unlovable, remember this heavenly assurance. Jesus loves you personally, passionately, powerfully. Others may promise and fail, but God's love always prevails. And his love, if you'll let it, can fill your heart and transform your life. I want to thank you for joining me on this journey through Song of Songs. I think that it's been entertaining and hopefully uplifting to you. And if you're ready to experience the all-consuming, overwhelming love of God, I want to invite you to reach out to me. And together we'll seek God's wisdom and guidance, nurturing a deeper understanding of his love for us. In the meantime, let's stand and sing together, church.